ITV's new season of mini-series starts next Sunday at 7:45 with Family of Spies.
I got a second job. I'm going to be making some extra cash. Don't say anything to anybody, not even the kids, okay?
You're a spy!
Starring Powers Booth, based on a true story.
Michael, are you working for him?
No way, Mom.
Sir, the Soviet trawlers changed course to intersect with the Hannibal.
Starting next Sunday, 7:45, Family of Spies.
Commercial union. We won't make a drama out of a crisis.
Like to make your hall a touch more inviting? Get down to do it all. There's a £7 voucher on top, too. Look out for it in the national press. It's down at Do It All. Why aren't you?
Natural hints from Dulux. Gently colour your home with natural beauty.
Are you watching TV? Isn't Dave just gorgeous?
Hello, Mum. How are you? Oh. I'm sorry to hear that, Mum. Oh, he was all right when I spoke to him yesterday.
Everything in the high street has a price ticket.
Yes, they're fine.
Now, calls from BT do too.
Yes. Isn't James just dreamy? No, he was looking the other way.
If you choose, we can now put a price tag on every call you make of 50p or over, free.
Mr. Crichton, I'm phoning about the Saturday job you advertised.
We give you the choice because some of you want to know where the calls are going.
You've got an awful lot of people coming. No honesty.
And some of you don't.
Yes, we might too. Isn't John just scrummy?
It's back on ITV. It'll be all right on the night. Back on Saturday, August the 31st.
There's a dream I feel so rare, so real. It's the world in you beyond the world will be.
Wales and the Rugby World Cup, live only on ITV.
It seems that you and me have been mad at each other for so long.
That we just didn't like each other.
On Golden Pond, after the news.
The news from ITN.
First pictures of Gorbachev as coup prisoner. Now he prepares the speech to save his career. Russians toast freedom without communism. And the world's fastest man, Carl Lewis, takes gold. Good evening. The Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev tonight released a dramatic video which his family shot in secret while they were held prisoner during the coup. In it, he appealed 4 times to the Supreme Soviet not to believe the coup leaders. The Russian President Boris Yeltsin said tonight Mr. Gorbachev must share the blame for the failed coup because he had placed the plotters in their positions. Mr. Gorbachev is preparing a major speech to the Soviet Parliament tomorrow in what's being seen as a final attempt to save his presidency. Tonight, the country's new defense minister announced that 80% of the Soviet military command will be replaced. In other developments, it's been announced that EC foreign ministers will meet this week to decide whether to recognize the breakaway Baltic states. The Soviet Republic of Moldova is planning to declare its secession on Tuesday. Belarus has also decided to announce independence. And Mr. Gorbachev's top military advisor, Marshal Sergei Akhromayev, has committed suicide. Our first report is from our Moscow correspondent, Tim Ewart.
Mr. Gorbachev, looking tired and drawn, hoped this furtive home video would tell the world of his plight. There's been deception of the people, he said. And on the basis of this lie, there's been an anti-constitutional coup, a crime against the state. Mr. Gorbachev, who insisted he was completely well, included a picture of his granddaughter practicing ballet steps. At the Kremlin today, Mr. Gorbachev's political future hung in the balance as he was locked in crisis talks before a critical meeting tomorrow of the Supreme Soviet. He'll use it to outline his plans for the future and to give his most detailed analysis yet of last week's abortive coup. He was surrounded by radical advisors he's ignored in the past, like the economist Grigory Yavlinsky and Alexander Yakovlev, the former party ideology chief. The Russian Republic's Prime Minister Ivan Selayev is playing a key role. He's also Boris Yeltsin's right-hand man. At Mr. Yeltsin's headquarters across town, Russian members of the Supreme Soviet were preparing their battle plans. They'll back their leaders' demands for more rapid reform, seeking more than cosmetic government changes.
Because if Gorbachev tries to limit the changes by just personnel replacements and pretends that nothing really happened in these 3 days, I think that the public rage can be turned against him and it will be extremely difficult to control the situation.
Mr. Yeltsin himself used a TV interview to criticize Mr. Gorbachev again tonight. He had to share the blame for the coup, he said.
You cannot absolve him of his guilt in the coup. Who chose the officials? He did. Who confirmed them? He did. He was betrayed by his closest people. Almost all the cabinet members. They betrayed him. He chose them himself.
They were packing the gas masks away at the Russian parliament today, but outside, nervous Muscovites were once again blocking the streets with trolley buses after another unsubstantiated rumor that the tanks were rolling again. To quell such uncertainty, the new defense minister, General Yevgeny Shaposhnikov, promised today the Red Army would never again be used against its own people. And further evidence of the disarray among the Soviet leadership, former Chief of Staff Sergei Akhromayev has committed suicide, suggesting he too was involved in the coup. Mr. Gorbachev's power may be slipping away, his role becoming increasingly irrelevant. But most observers believe that were he to leave office or be forced out, the power vacuum left could create a crisis that would be even more dangerous. Tim Ewart, ITN, Moscow.
Many Soviet people have been celebrating the death of a political creed that's controlled their lives for more than 70 years. But for some, the demise of the Communist Party means an end to their privileges.
Behind these gates, guarded from the public, live some of the privileged few whose days are now numbered. Top communists formerly protected in this private compound, now on the run as their property and privileges are seized. The guard, aware of yesterday's decree that officially confiscated all party property, was confused. "You can't come in," he said, "for this is now the property of the president." Locals who live around the perimeter of the party compound have watched the elite sweep in and out for 40 years. Today they were celebrating their demise.
За нашу победу, за нашу встречу.
59-year-old Galia Fyodorova and her family say the system that allowed the party to gouge itself while they made do on their farm must end, but they don't want revenge. Our history has shown that hate doesn't help anyone, she said. We just want the injustice exposed. And to that end, these Russians, no longer frightened of the authorities, showed us a back way in to the private party compound. Inside, nestling in the woods, we found a luxurious clubhouse. Locals told us it housed a swimming pool, billiard room and cinema. And the housing for the party elite. Here, middle-ranking bureaucrats from the Cabinet Office, large two-storey dachas, all the furnishings, even the linen, provided free by the party. And even this week's events don't seem to have upset the residents' sense of complacency. Sunday tennis goes on with or without the Communist Party ban. President Gorbachev has set up a commission to investigate this sort of privilege. Here, a private medical centre to tend to the needs of the residents, 50 households in all. But it's been slow to report its findings, and as we were told to leave the compound, these sorts of scenes will not help Mr. Gorbachev standing with the people now. Penny Marshall, ITN, Moscow.
Lithuania's President Landsbergis said today that achieving full independence from the Soviet Union was now only a formality. He told ITN he believed Mr. Gorbachev was now Mr. Yesterday.
In Lithuania, those who supported the coup have all but fled. This was where the feared Oman Ministry of Interior Forces had been based in Vilnius since January, when 14 Lithuanians died at their hands. Overnight, they disappeared, leaving their food and even cooking pots behind in their haste to get away. Some took refuge in a closed army base a few miles away. Today, we managed to talk to two of them wearing their characteristic black berets, although they wouldn't leave the barracks. On the streets leading to the parliament in Vilnius, there are now only Lithuanian, not Soviet soldiers. Inside the heavily guarded building, President Landsbergis told ITN Lithuania wasn't responsible, as some suggest, for the events which triggered the coup against President Gorbachev.
We were the catalyst, of course, and we helped that the communism collapsed in Soviet Union. And we would be shocked if someone or some people in the world would be say that we are guilty.
So you don't feel that you may be to blame for what's happened to Mr. Gorbachev?
In my opinion, Mr. Gorbachev is Mr. Yesterday.
Where Lenin's statue stood in the center of Vilnius until this week, his collected works now lie discarded and discredited. The memorial to those who died in the coup nearby is covered with flowers. And on the Republic's frontiers, they're preparing a further step towards independence, issuing their own visas.
So from tonight, Lithuanian border guards should have replaced those from the Soviet Union on the country's western frontier with Poland. Whatever the response from Moscow, the view here is that it's becoming increasingly irrelevant. Libby Wiener, ITN, in Vilnius, Lithuania.
The end of the Communist Party control will affect every single Soviet organisation and institution. In London, a spokesman at the Soviet embassy said that all political links with the party had now been severed.
The Communist Party has been the glue that's held the Soviet Union together. The party's demise faces the new Prime Minister, Ivan Silayev, with the question of what, if anything, should go in its place. In government, the party's writ extended from top to bottom. Senior officials and department heads were all card-carrying communists. The party had some 12 million active members recently. Abandonment of party affiliation could be quick. Here in London, Soviet diplomats attended a Russian Orthodox service today, demonstrating their rejection of the atheist party's past domination.
We disband all the political formations inside the embassy. There is no party organization at the embassy now. So we are totally devoting our efforts to the bilateral Soviet-British relations, international issues, etc.
In the Soviet economy, the Communist Party had powerful influence. The directors of industries were all party members. Party committees controlled industrial policy. In the Russian Republic, party cells had already been banned in the factories, but the economy's escape from communist control was slow. The break with such a dominant political system may still not be easy.
Well, clearly, if everybody who's ever been a member of the Communist Party is expelled, then the economy will collapse. But if people who have shown their reform credentials remain in position, then they're not just ex-communists, but they're also professionals and technocrats. The economy should, in fact, work even better than before.
And will the military have an important role in keeping the place together?
They may have to keep order, but I suspect that with the dissolution of the Communist Party, the disorder that we've seen over the last few months will begin to quieten, and they won't need to play that role.
In the military, party members were fully in charge. All officers of senior rank had to be in the party. The military owed its allegiance more to the party than to the state. Yet it was the military who prevented the hardline coup from succeeding by refusing to fire on the Russian people. For 4 decades, the Soviets imposed their ways on Eastern Europe. Now they're following the example of Hungary and Czechoslovakia in uprooting the foundations of communist control.
The Prime Minister, John Major, said it was unwise to write off President Gorbachev after his resignation as communist leader. Mr. Major also announced that the Foreign Office Minister, Douglas Hogg, would visit the Baltic republics this week to discuss recognising their independence.
At home in Huntingdon, John Major's preparing to meet President Bush this week with a list of proposals on how to help the Soviets. In return, he wants a radical restructuring of the Soviet economy.
What is very necessary is to move speedily to economic reform, and it has to be substantial economic reform. And providing they go down that reform path, more political reform, more economic reform, then we in the West will help them.
But will that help come soon enough? Boris Yeltsin's economic advisor argues there could be widespread social unrest in the Soviet Union if the West doesn't fulfill a shopping list of demands.
Technical assistance, food and consumer goods, and hard currency reserve funds, and probably rescheduling of debts.
There's certainly cross-party accord here that more does need to be done soon.
It would be natural, necessary, entirely reasonable for us to have a business plan that did introduce and include disarmament and reform, along with the various technical developments which must take place in order to enable the standard of production and the standard of living of the Soviet people to increase.
Clearly all the conditions that caused us to be cautious at the time of the G7 summit are now swept away, largely swept away. We have to say, what can we do to assist? I suspect most of that will be know-how assistance rather than blank checks.
Well, the Soviets seem to accept that any Western aid will have to be accompanied by further economic reforms. There are many in the Soviet Union, particularly in Russia, who now argue that it's not Mr. Gorbachev the West should be talking to, but Mr. Yeltsin. Mark Webster, ITN, Westminster.
Now, other news. In Yugoslavia, at least 14 people are reported dead in renewed battles across Croatia. In eastern Croatia, the federal forces used fighter jets, tanks and artillery against Croatian forces. The clashes followed the shooting down of a Federal Air Force plane by Croatian forces near Osijek. Athletics, and Carl Lewis has set a new world record for the 100 metres at the World Championships in Tokyo. Americans took the first 3 places. Britain's Linford Christie broke the British and Commonwealth record, but could only finish 4th.
The quickest man in history warmed up for what was to become the greatest 100 metres ever seen. Carl Lewis at 30, desperate to regain his crown from Leroy Burrell, the 22-year-old world record holder. Linford Christie trying to prove he was still in the top 3. Off the blocks, Lewis in lane 5 was last, but in a sensational comeback he moved smoothly through the field, not just to win, but to break the record by 0.04 of a second. And for the United States, a clean sweep of the medals. Burrell 2nd, Mitchell 3rd. For Christie, disappointment at being edged into 4th, despite his best time ever. Afterwards, he said he'd probably retire. No excuses, though, for Steve Backley in the javelin. Before today, he'd never lost a major championship, but he chose the biggest event of his career to turn in his worst performance. Just over 78 metres was Backley's poorest throw since he was a junior. He went out in the qualifying round. And for Tom McKean, another in a long series of disasters. He looked to be leading his heat of the 800 metres comfortably. Then, easing up just before the line, he was passed by two others. Third place wasn't good enough, and another British medal hope was out.
Golf and Europe's Ryder Cup captain Bernard Gallagher has named his squad to take on the Americans at Kiowa Island. Paul Broadhurst clinched his place after finishing second in the German Open. Spain's Jose Maria Olazabal and England's Mark James have been picked as personal choices of the captain. That's the ITN News this Sunday evening. Have a good evening.
Good evening. Well, we've had a fairly quiet day across most of the country. It's been warm, especially in the south, with temperatures well into the 70s. It looks like it's going to be fairly warm right through the week, especially over England and Wales. Let's have a look and see what's been happening. Well, one area of high pressure is beginning to decline and move away a little bit. That's going to allow these fronts to come in across the country through the night tonight and through tomorrow. But as they come south, they'll be dying out. And any rain in England and Wales will be little more than the odd spot of drizzle. So tomorrow then, England and Wales, best of the weather, really dry, plenty of sunshine, probably the best of the sunshine in the morning. There's that patchy rain up to the northwest, and as we go through the day, that working its way into Northern Ireland, some central parts of Scotland, but as I said, it shouldn't amount to very much. Best of the temperatures likely in the south, where you see the best of the sun, 23 to